Hello, everyone. I'm Eina. I'm an addict. Hans only thinks about me as a half person. I have a double name. I want to thank you, the convention committee, for inviting me here to speak. And I think it's really, really nice of you to make me compress 30 years of membership in NA to 22 minutes. That's true sadism. But being a masochist as I am, I think I can handle it. I've gone through a lot of pain in my recovery. And we all know the story before in using days. And mine is my story. And to compress it, I can tell you that I grew up being bullied. I was locked in the child psychiatric ward. I was medicated as a child. I was sexually abused, the whole 9 yards. And luckily I had some fantastic parents that put up with everything that I did. And they are one reason why I'm still here today. Bless their hearts. They're playing a harp on the cloud today. They had the privilege to see me clean. When I came into NA was extremely small. We were about somewhere between 20 and 40 people in NA, Sweden. We had no literature. We had English literature. And the steps, I think that we were step 1, 2, and 3, were paper copies, Xeroxed so many times you couldn't even read them. I spoke to Pete before, and we opened up in paper, and there was a cross in the paper, so you couldn't see the letters. That's how much we used them, and so it was very hard in those days. We didn't have any step working guide or anything like that, and we had one meeting a week where we came from. I think we were about 8 or 9 members in NA when I came in Gothenburg then. I live in Stockholm today. The thing is that we did loads of AA meetings in between the NA meetings. During 1990 didn't exist if you didn't do AA meetings. I'm very grateful to AA, but NA is my home. It speaks my language. And today I do NA meetings solemnly. One thing that I heard early in recovery is take what we want and leave the rest. But in my addicted mind, I heard, fuck the rest. And the thing is that I did that. I didn't give a shit about doing the steps. I didn't work the steps. I read all the literature and I did the meetings, but I didn't work the steps. And I can tell you one thing, I know what recovery in the speed of a snail is. Being clean and still having the behavior patterns. Once I started to, one thing I heard in the meetings early in those days, in the beginning of the 90s, was, I don't know if I'm going to use tomorrow. To me, that opened my door for a relapse. Thing is that was setting up my mind for a relapse. So when I relapsed 1992, that was one of the things that really made me do that. And when I came back into the rooms again, that emergency sign that I had to be taken down. I had to take a decision to never use again, no matter what. Thing is, if I take a decision in my heart that I don't want again, that's the key. But when times gets really, really tough, I need to bring it down to 1 day at a time, 1 hour at a time, or a minute at a time. But my goal is to stay clean for the rest of my life. I don't want that shithole of life in my life anymore. I've been there, I've done that, I ain't going back. And that decision has stuck with me through some really rough times. And I have a lot of issues in my life. I'm bipolar. I've got ADHD. If you name something, I probably got it. I'm an addict. I want more of everything. That's just the way it is. But what the thing is that once I started working the steps, when I started writing the steps, because I saw friends of mine that was in the fellowship, and they developed what I didn't. I still had the emotional patterns, the anger, the resentments, all that was still there, even though I was clean. But once I started working the steps and starting to know myself, I was scared. Today I can look in hindsight, I can say, I was scared. When you've been bullied, you've been brought up, and people tell you you're stupid, you're worthless, you can't do anything, all that shit. You'd start to believe that. It becomes a truth. So my self-worth, my self-image was so low that once I got to the program as a prayer answer, I should say that. I forgot to say that in the beginning. And when I went to my first meeting, I heard this voice in my head saying, "This is what you prayed for. Take care of it, and you shall be delivered." So, to me, the program is God-given. What you believe, that's your choice. But I think that's the way it is. So, being a member in those first 8 years, one of the excuses I had was, I don't need to do the steps because I already believe in God. I've already been to my priest and done my confession, and so on, so on. All these excuses. And I grew up with the punishing God. Once I started working the steps, step 1, and I started realizing that, you know what? I had a short circuit now. It blanked out. And that's okay, that too. Thank you. When I admitted my powerlessness, and I started to really admit my powerlessness, not only for the disease of addiction, but for my behavior patterns and everything. Because it goes deeper than just the addiction. It says in the basic text in the beginning that our problem is a result. Our addiction is a result as a result of a deeper problem. I think it says. I could say it in Swedish, but you wouldn't understand it then. And that's the truth, because all these behavior patterns that I had, I was powerless for. I needed to identify them, and then once I started working step 2. I started defining, letting a higher power in. And what I needed to do there was to change the perspective of my higher power to that. I think I heard somewhere a loving God. And that was really hard for me. Because I've learned that, let me give you an example. When I sat at the table at home and I spilled out a glass of milk, I got one like that, and then Dad said, God will punish you. So I grew up with a punishing God. And then suddenly I hear, you're going to have a loving higher power. And then that I can define it myself. And that it made it so much easier. In step 3, once I started working step 3 and letting go, saying like, taking a decision to leave my will over to the power of God, which was very, very, very hard. I think it's very hard for most of us because we suffer from control issues. I suffer from control issues. And I've heard so many people saying about step 4, it's so terrible, it's so, oh, they're scared and everything. I'll tell you what, to me, step 4 was one of the most beautiful things that I've gone through. Because suddenly I realized I'm not bad. I realized that I have pros and I have cons. And one of the promises that comes with the program is that our weaknesses should become our strengths. But in step 4, we need to identify these weaknesses. And then step 5, to just leave it to somebody else was just wonderful. Step 6, that was a hard one for me. That was a really hard one for me. Imagine if you have a higher power, and the higher power sets up an agenda. It says, well, this week we're going to do gluttony. And everything you read, everything you hear at the meetings, everything you see on TV, it's all about gluttony. Next week, it comes to another one of all these. And this kept on for almost 5.5 months. And it came to a point when I said to the man upstairs, are we done yet? And then I was. The thing is that I was so confronted with my character defects, so it just prepared me for having step 7 and having God remove those shortcomings. I really, really love this process, and I've always said to my sponsees, don't go into a relationship before step 7, preferably before step 8 or 9. And people say, why? Do you want to give away a defect person, or do you want to give away somebody that has been healed? Because that's what it's all about. Once we work the steps up to step 7, something happens within us that we don't act out on our defects. And if I go into a relationship when I haven't worked the program, you can bet that you will act out on the defects if it's jealousy or suspicion or whatever. But once I've done the steps, it becomes so much better. Step 8 and 9 are beautiful, and they are scary sometimes. And there are some issues around them where we should or should not. And my problem was that some of the stuff that I had on my amendments list was stuff that was like 15 years old. And I called friends in the fellowship, and because I moved back to my old hometown, I used to break into a daycare center every month when they did the monthly purchase of food. I filled a backpack and a couple of paper bags, and then I could buy drugs for the money instead. And of course, when we moved back, my youngest son, he gets assigned to that place. And that was not really funny, I can tell you that. But then friends in the fellowship told me, and it says in step 9, making amends except when it would harm others. And he asked me, would it harm somebody? Yeah, my son. Yeah, then you shouldn't do it. And we came into that yard, and 2 out of these 3 women that work there used to work there when I broke in. And it was painful to go through that, but I didn't hurt my son by saying anything. But I tell you, a story is that we have to think about when we do amends and when we don't. And I love step 10 because it helps me not to build up a backpack of trouble. I really love the program because it helps me on a daily basis, because it says that we should do it, that we should practice these principles in all our affairs. And basically, to me, and I hope to you too, is that you take a nutrition circle, And in the middle of it, in the core, that's NA. All the stuff that we learn here. And then it has to, I don't know the word, but it has to shine into every aspect of our life. And that's what it's all about. So I've become honest. I do things that I would never do before. And people trust me in a way people didn't do before. Because I've changed so much. And I really love NA. I really love the program because it's changed me to a better version of myself. And today, I am myself. I wasn't myself before. I had different clothing styles. I tried to be somebody else all the time. This has made me become me, the version of who I want to be. Then one of the big keys in my recovery is prayer meditation, step 11. That is something that I practice on a daily basis today. And it's that connection, because I have a loving higher power that wants to show me things and tell me things. And I have a regular life outside of the rooms. And for example, if I'm about to do this business deal, just about a month ago or two, I was supposed to go over to UK and buy a car, and I got this strong prompting not to. And I listened to that one. I didn't. Because I did the other way, because my ego is very, very strong. And it's hard to hear the silent whisperings of your higher power when the ego has a megaphone. That's the way it is. So I went and bought another car in the UK 3 years ago, and I was prompted not to, and I've lost so much money due to that, because I didn't listen. Hard lesson to learn. So I'm more cautious about using prayer and meditation in my daily life, in all my affairs, in my recovery and outside. Step 12, carrying the message, not the mess. We know the mess. We don't need to carry that. But if I am open and I'm willing and I do whatever I can to carry the message, the thing is that miracles do happen. Let me give you an example. I drive a taxi. I drove this young Asian, beautiful girl, and she was really stoned out of her mind on coke. And I confronted her in the car and I said, you better stop that shit. And she said, what do you know about that? Well, I did that stuff before you were born. And then I had a meeting scheduled and I gave it to her. And she was a little bit offended and she got out of the car and time went by and I went to the daily lunch meeting in Stockholm and this girl started sharing at the meetings and she was really puking her shit, to this extent that I just don't want to hear her. Time went by, about 6 months, 8 months, and then we were sitting in the coffee shop afterwards, and she said, aren't you the cab driver that drove me? Yeah. And she's got over 9 years clean now. That meeting schedule is always in my pocket. And I really urge you to do the same. Don't be afraid. Just be open-minded. And it will happen that somebody needs that business card and they might come to a meeting later on. Because that's how beautiful it is. There are more stuff that I would like to say, but time's up. I got 2 minutes left. And you know what? I'm satisfied with it, and I hope you are too. And God bless you all and have a really nice convention.